Twice Upon a Planet.
Part 2.
Background noise came from every direction, soon falling to silence. Tyrelsa found herself standing in some kind of liquid, but it acted like water. Then a dark metallic figure appeared in the distance and spoke something in a way that could only be felt as a kind of vibration.
What?
The figure changed its shape transitively. Then it began to form into a humanoidal being. Tyrelsa, now fearful of what may happen next, stood absolutely frozen. Suddenly there was a flash of very bright light which made her jump. A strong scent of lavender swam in the air. All she could focus on was the creature standing next to her. Astonished, Tyrelsa asked how he could speak without being heard.
Why have you come here to this planet?
That reason will be shown when we reach once No. To you as
Titan? Why are we going to Titan?
Tyrelsa thought for a moment, then remembered where her father lived.
That's where Oasis is.
She noticed that Zikar had not responded.
Did I say something wrong?
We have been watching this for many lives. Our race is the first to advancement.
Tyrelsa adopted a curious look on her face.
But now? We're not much better off than we were. We still use nuclear-powered space vehicles to travel within our solar system. If your race is the first intelligent one, wouldn't you find something better to do?
Zikar glided toward a shadowy corner of the room.
You have saw many stellar life forms for your grounds and intelligent life. But you haven't been always of peace. In your time project to Dāce, we sent a probe through what your grounds referred to as a wormhole. And it arrived in a stable orbit of your stellar life orb. We observed you and your ignorance to comply with us. In this ignorance, you almost destroyed grounders.
Now, this was unexpected. A race first to technology and intelligence. Hardly believable. It could be a trap. Nah, all those old Earth portrayals of aliens were only pure speculation. Right? She wasn't sure. It was as if she had lost her train of thought. She could feel her mind being guided with immense strength. But was it to do with this creature? Or was it caused by mere emotional shakiness? Tyrelsa held her hands out in an explanative manner.
So, let me get this correct. You saw us in war and thought we weren't of importance at that time. Except now, you see we have stopped our fighting and live in much more peace than before.
Still quite unclear on things, she tried to piece all this together.
I think I understand now, but one thing I don't get is why you're choosing me to go to Titan.
Zikar seemed static from the whole discussion. He had slanty azure eyes, but not where you might expect. They were located where his nose ought to be, if he were human. Below his eyes was what appeared to be a mouth. It seemed odd that Tyrelsa could hear him, but he did not move his lips when he spoke, only communicate through vibrations in the air. The rest of his physical self was slightly transparent in most places, sort of like a globular mist, but he had the ability to reach out in all directions, impossible for any human. His height varied depending on how much light shed on him, sometimes looking like melted metal in less light. The more light, he grew to be nearly 12 feet tall, traveling like mist with eyes. She again noticed the fragrance of the room.
Why does it smell like lavender in here?
We wanted to let you that reminded you of our light orb.
But lavender is my favorite scent. How could you have known?
The puzzled girl briefly thought to herself.
I hope this thing can't read minds.
Zikar replied within her own head.
Yes.
The interior of what she could make out, with limited human eyesight, was very dark and very bright all at the same time. In fact, it seemed to be almost flashing, only ever so slightly. Back on Earth, Dāce and Nendi were very distressed over what had happened to their dear Tyrelsa. They just couldn't make out the occurrence in the field. Many months passed with no sign of Tyrelsa. People began to doubt she was even alive anymore. Dāce was probably about the only one who still believed she was. Nendi sometimes visited the mysterious barren field and hoped she'd find Tyrelsa standing there, as she usually would long ago. But it was always found empty and quiescent. Near Saturn's moon planet, Titan, SV-1 officer Jenka Hummins was in the middle of checking on protonic leakage coming from an outer shell engine. Commissioner Lance Service, who was the second-hand authority member of the crew, warned Jex of the possible dangers with such a repair task.
Be careful out there, Jex. Make sure you hold on to the silicon ledges at the base of the airlock.
I'll be fine. It's nothing statistical.
Jex, that's not even a word, is it? Just watch out. The sun is looking mighty unsteady lately.
It'll take me no less than a Dāce hour. If we're lucky, we'll drop dead on the tread.
Jex went out to the left side of the space station, wearing a luminescent spacesuit and a frost-aquatic helmet with gravity boots. As he was lasering loose one of the sockets to the first protective shell on the engine, he felt an uneasiness run through himself, the kind of feeling you get when you are being watched. Suddenly, a very large ellipsoidal object flew right over him. Within the alien ship,
Destination of stellar light orb. Titan has been accepted. Our reason for bringing you here is...
the entire ship began to shake with mighty force. A solar flare was on course toward both ships. Jex, still fixing the engine outside, was flung around like a frail leaf. He nearly lost control of the laser. Zikar, on the alien ship, moved to one side of the room. The whole life form morphed back into the featureless metallic figure it was before. It went over to an elliptical ring-shaped statue. In a swirl of some kind of sparkling energy, embraced it. Tyrelsa screamed and grabbed onto the rippled wall surrounding her. The shaking stopped almost instantly. Tyrelsa sunk down to the rubbery bubble floor in relief.
Somehow this life form, something, has ceased the shaking, perhaps with a protective shield around the ship.
On the Oasis, Jex was still clinging on outside for dear life. He messaged the crew. Jex's scratchily distributed voice could be heard through a telecom device as the crew listened in the control room.
SV-1 Officer Hummins here. I managed to fix the engine, but I don't know what happened to the laser. I'm coming back aboard. Solar flares are causing interference.
The stars in the galaxy shined brilliantly across the planets like a blanket of radiance and warmth. Things were still and silent beyond the outer solar system, whilst within the planetary neighborhood, the dual Earth was beaming with noise and confusion. The humans which lived there had great knowledge in observatories. On the long range, the NC, a collective of independent scientists who named themselves after the first populated lunar city, discovered the strange new object now approaching the planet. There was a lot in common with the Hummins and Dual Earth. Jex, for example, was born, raised, and married there. Then he, his wife, Nendi Hummins, and their new son, Dāce Hummins, moved to Earth, where Dāce spent some time in New Australia. Jex then returned to Space Station Tados, orbiting Saturn. It was there that he was reassigned to the Oasis, where he remained for several years, and 21 Dual Earth Dāce, an NC word for time and numbers, usually meaning half of something or years spent over a long term. Jex returned to the Oasis space station. A navigation monitor reported that there was an unidentified object hovering just above them.
Details, please.
Station tech expert Brint Pealy, not a stranger to unusual blips on electronic instruments, scanned a data card through one of the machines near the side of the control room. He then read the results.
The object is approximately 5,000 kilometers in diameter, shaped like an ellipsoid with a chunk missing, and it does not appear to be emitting any light on its own. Definitely not of Earth origin. The rest of the information is unknown.
Amidst the alien ship, though growing weary from all the excitement, Tyrelsa stood up, dusted herself off, and began to wander around, looking over her new strange surroundings. Zikar was nowhere to be seen. This made her much more calm now, knowing that there most likely wasn't anyone watching her. The walls of the room wound around through the top of the ceiling on down to the floor. There seemed to be nothing of mechanical control or material objects, except for the one statue that she saw Zikar use before. There was an echoing, murmuring sound throughout.
I wonder if we're anywhere near the Oasis.
But what she didn't know was that right behind her, only several feet away, the alien life form known as Zikar was closely studying her every move. She noticed something on the wall and wondered to herself.
What are those markings for?
Tyrelsa reached her hand out to touch the curious markings. A long glowing blue light shot out from the floor. Tyrelsa saw the likes of every scientific energy known to humankind displayed. Plasma, gravity, fusion, fission, sound, and light. There were even some that were unrecognizable, for they had not yet been discovered. She quickly turned around to see Zikar floating and glaring at her.
Huh? I can't understand you.
Tyrelsa shrieked and ran around looking for a place to hide. She had grown up after the dark-turned century on timid Earth. The poor girl wasn't used to coping with beings from other worlds. Yes, even the people on Dual Earth hadn't met up with any advanced beings either. But the denizens on First Earth were really unprepared for such brain-boggling concepts. Zikar moved to the markings on the wall and repeated as if helium were present. The blue light vanished. The ship silenced. He turned back into humanoidal form and proceeded to approach Tyrelsa, who was now curled up in the corner with fright.
Do not fear us.
Tyrelsa pointed with a shaky finger to the markings on the wall.
What was all of that?
Our invention. It enables its viewer to sense your energy.
So that's how you turned the tall grass into lavender.
We must board the second stellar light orb. It is our beginning, as it is yours.
Wait a minute. Do you mean the second planet from the sun or the Dual Earth?
It is identified to two grounders as Mars.
Oh.
She stood up, walked over to one of the oddly shaped walls, and looked around the room.
Why aren't there any windows or controls?
Please do not ask any further everything will become clear to you once this vessel executes its primary destination.
Tyrelsa stayed silent for a few minutes.
I do not wish to anger you, Zikar, but can you blame me for asking? I mean, you've taken me off my planet. You tell me we must go to the dual Earth, and you won't even tell me why.
Zikar went into a hypno-like, off-like state and remained quiet. Aboard the Oasis, Jex was pondering over what he and the crew should do about the unidentified object. Standing at the front of the control room was Communications Advisor Jenka Stensil, first and last female officer to figure out the newly installed Astrostar message system, a mechanism needed for just about every type of speech signal, from passing starcrafts to satellites, etc.
Maybe we should contact Jax. It doesn't appear to be hostile, but we can't be too sure, although I agree with you. Contacting them is the best move at the moment.
Jex pushed a silver button on the computer pad.
We'll use the strong data stream wave, and hopefully they will know our kind of technology.
Tyrelsa Hummins witnessed Zikar's abrupt disappearance from the ship. All but quickly, just as the creature vanished, she was encased within a dark neutronic shield, unable to move except to think. Interior Detection Officer Marl Darck ran up to Jex.
Mr. Hummins, we seem to have an unknown life form aboard. It's moving fast, sir.
Right. Send a search cube now.
The search cube has been sent. Mr. Hummins, it is currently tracking it down.
Jex looked at the detection monitor, a digital map of each area of the space station.
Just how fast is that thing?
Darck watched the second larger screen, located on the upper overhang above Jex's head.
Unknown. We've never encountered anything like this before. We're doing a scan of the object above the station now, sir. Apparently there is more than one life form. Still inconclusive. One thing we do not know is what it wants and why it is here.
Yes, but how fast is it going? Give me an estimate.
Well, looks like our search cube is having a bit of trouble even finding it. It appears to be slowing back and forth, from stationary to light speed.
Zikar stopped in the room where Jex and the ID officer Darck were leaning over, staring at their equipment.
It's gone. It's not on the screen anymore.
Jex spun around, set eyes on the strange alien life form floating in the middle of the control room. He then reached over to tug Darck's shoulder, who was still staring in disbelief at the monitor.
What?
Darck turned his head, looked behind himself. Everyone noticed him and followed suit. Now the entire control room crew had their attention to this creature. Zikar stared directly at Jex and began to speak. His voice felt and sounded like a low to high band of radio noise, but he made sure that the grounders could hear clearly his words.
Do not fear. We may know that. I am Zikar. It is important that I contact the main grounder here. Which one of you signifies such?
Jex stepped up one pace from the rest.
Greetings. Life form? I'm the one you speak of. Why have you come here?
You are relative to your multiple Jacksons.
What do you mean? I'm afraid I can't understand you, and how do you know my name?
It is not our language. Your thoughts can speak. You must leave this ship and be born on ours.
Jex felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end.
I won't go anywhere without some explanation of what's going on.
In an instant, Zikar pointed at him with a subtle hand-like globular appendage. Without a blink of anybody's eye, Jex was gone. Everyone gasped. Jenka Stensil screamed.
Jax! Jax!
Jax!
Jax!
Darck couldn't believe what he had just seen happen. He wafted his hand through only thin air in the space where Jex had been standing.
Mr. Hummins, where did you go?
Jex reappeared, standing on an unfamiliar ledge rising just above the floor.
Where am I? What happened?
Tyrelsa, still frozen with the neutronic shield, saw her father, forgetting about her inability to move, attempted to get his attention. But she could not be heard. She appeared almost as a wax figure, if she were visible. The shield kept sound, light, and even time from getting through to whatever it surrounded. In the middle of First Earth's Edian night, Dāce was asleep. He began to dream. A dim room in the distance. A girl. Someone close. Another. Vague. Dark. She speaks to him with only one word. The image is distorted. The dream fades. Dāce awoke to find Nendi staring at him as if she'd seen a ghost. Dāce got out of his bed and rubbed his eyes.
Mom, what are you looking at me like that for?
Nendi was trembling, pale-faced.
Your hands! Look! Look at your hands!
Dāce peered down at his hands and saw that they were even glowing, just as Tyrelsa's the night she saw the bright star.
My hands! Mom, I had a very eerie dream last night. I dreamt I was in a dim room with a girl in it. A familiar girl. Mom, she said one word. Titan. I have this feeling that the girl was Tyrelsa, Mom. I don't know how, but she spoke to me through my dream.
You're just as foolish as your sister. I don't know what happened that night, Dāce, but I know that there is no way she could talk to you. Maybe I'm just too old. My imagination isn't able to adapt to such wild ideas, I guess.
He took his mother's hand in his.
That's not true. You haven't grown too old. Although you really should believe me. I don't make up lies. And I certainly wouldn't conceive of any cruel jokes about Tyrelsa. I love her as much as you do, you know.
Dāce, that's sweet of you to say. What did she say again to you? I mean, in your dream?
Titan.
How strange. I don't see why she would talk about Titan, unless...
Dāce put his jacket on.
Unless what?
Unless she meant something about checks.
What? You mean Oasis?
Yes, exactly. Still doesn't make sense, though.
He speculated and thought hard.
Well, maybe she's trying to tell us her location, like where she is right now.
Possibly.
Dāce roamed through the house to the door.
At any rate, I'm going to find her. I'll see you later. I'm going to the field.
Nendi ran to the door.
No, Dāce! Wait!
It was too late. The door slammed shut. Nendi dashed into Tyrelsa's room and searched around for some clues. While rummaging around in her closet, a dress landed on the floor. The purplish, still perfectly healthy, glowing lavender flower fell out of the right pocket. A flash of lightning pierced the sky outside, crashed through the window, followed by a boom of thunder. Nendi picked up the flower with a very pallid look on her face, then rushed to the open window and yelled for Dāce. It began to pour rain like never before and became extremely windy. Without a moment wasted, she ran out the door, outside into the storm, looking for Dāce. With no luck in finding him, she reluctantly returned. Several miles away, down the road on the other side of the field, lived another observer of what was now known in Edion as the Hummins mystery. 5'4", slim and clean-shaven, with short black hair, hazel blue eyes, usually wearing a black suit with no tie, around 26 years of age, one of the few people who didn't take Eon tablets. He thought it to be another trap keenly set by the NC. He's Nevlin Corton, born in the Midland residence just outside of Edeon. No living relatives. A man who had held on to most old earthly customs and ideas. He washed in the company of nobody but himself and his astrostar equipment. Laser scan telescopes, hydro reactors, and small robokinetic flying machines. Astrostar technology was first developed on planet Mars for excavation purposes before its terraformation. Use of such technology was usually unfavored by Earth. It was seen as a disturbance to peace because it could be dangerous if abused. Nevlin wrote in his Old Earth journal. It read,
Date of entry 3/17/3104. Receiving strange readings from between Titan and Mars. Last observed unidentified object traveling in inner solar system. Too slow to make exact calculations. The Hummins mystery baffles me to this day. Whatever happened to that young girl is uncertain. But there are strong beliefs that she is still alive, taken somewhere, out, far away, perhaps even beyond this galaxy. But by what? It is important for study to continue. However, the Hummins family must eventually be confronted with these speculations and findings as soon as possible. End of entry.
Nevlin set down his journal and returned to the working room. In Old Earth terms, it was the laboratory. He mixed soil samples from the tall grass field with some chemicals. The substance combined to make a muddy-like texture. Nevlin felt uncertain and frustrated about this, so he put it down and went to look through the laser scan telescope. A lot of suns, a couple of nebulae, Jupiter, Saturn. Wait, there it was! He spotted the object he'd been studying for the past few weeks now. Deciding to make a notary drawing of it, he took up his pen and paper and began to sketch out specific features of the unknown space entity. Its shape was that of an ellipsoid, and dark. Very dark. So much, in fact, that he almost had trouble seeing it at all. Good thing he had a laser scanner. This would enable him to actually brighten any invisible or non-reflective objects out in space. It couldn't be a planet, nor a star. It was extremely large in diameter. Nearly no visible details on the surface. Nevlin continued drawing. When he was finished, he examined the image he had created from mind. He thought to himself quietly while leaning back in his chair in his scope room, sentimentally nicknamed. This is where he would keep all of his scope instruments, micro, plasma, gyro, tele, etc. His house was very big, much like an old Earth mansion. He was one of the city's most honored and disrespected cosmologists. In the past, he had won many awards, but all for discoveries relating to rather unimportant sciences. The NC had heard about him and banned his books about old Earth subjects. Nevlin visited Mars a few times. He refuses to call it dual Earth. He knew they stole that planet and dumped off all the opposers on this world tortured and tattered by their warlike ancestors from self-interest and greed. It angered him to think about those things, so he usually tried to keep his mind on his work. He continued to go over the drawing, suddenly reaching an outrageous conclusion.
Ah, it's a space vessel, but not one of ours.
Straight away, he knew it was time to talk with the Hummins. Filled with determination, Nevlin got out of his chair, hastily rushing out into the unrelenting torrent.